Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Political Napalm. Today, we're going to deal with a story that is so very tied to the core of J6 and rightoid messaging and conspiracies and quidiocy that this is an incredibly sad story. It is an indictment of what fake news actually is and what fake news can actually do and the harm it can cause those who fall down the Q well and fake news well and theory wells and everything like that. So this story is comparable to people who believe in things like flat earth, Holocaust denial, fake moon landings, JFK conspiracies, and everything like that. This is a modern telling of those exact same problems. And it's a story that needs to be shouted from the rooftops. It needs to be thrown in the faces of people who know this kind of crap is crap, and it needs to be thrown in the faces of those who don't believe it's crap, and it needs to serve as a wake-up call, similar to say, hey, if you smoke, you may die of lung cancer. Let's look at Rush Limbaugh, for example. It needs to be that forward of a message because unlike flat earth and many of the other conspiracy theories that are out there, this one led to actual death. This one led to physical harm. And it is very, very close, intimately close, to the craziness that even happened with Pizzagate. So, if you're not familiar with Q, Q stands for QAnon. Q is a internet personality who does these things called Q drops, which to quidiots is taken to be real examples. They believe these Q drops to be completely true, and there is incredible mathing and mapping out that goes on that says, okay, so and so said this sentence. If you look at the third word in the sentence, it lines up to the third Q drop of the day on the same day. Thereby, this person is Q. They know the storm is coming and chickens are gonna fall from the sky. QAnon and quidiocy stuff. Quiddy, it's just a terrible dark spot. It's a stain on the net and is a stain on American culture. And it is really, really sad that there is a group that believes in this, despite the fact that Q's prophecies don't come true. There are some right wingers pushing back against Q, basically claiming to be that Q is really a psyop to make right wingers look bad and fall for dumb stuff so that right wing movements can be discredited. Talk about actually having some awareness over here. I would agree that that is true. However, there is still very likely the case that this person is generating their Q drops because they actually believe it, despite the fact that none of them come true. Q is at one point was believed to be one of the Watkins father-son pair. Sometimes it is believed to be a disgraced former general and fired Trump General Michael Flynn. His own family is against him when he gets into these Q-related things. I cannot accurately predict anymore who I think Q is. For a long time, I believed it was one of the Watkins duo over there, tied to 4chan and everything like that. However, the case that it could be Michael Flynn is mounting considering his background in counterintelligence, and the fact that Michael Flynn was, of course, at the infamous Moscow dinner. But what exactly did Q do and lead to that actually led to death? Well, there was an unknown story, relatively unknown story, of a death at J6. We all know about Sitnick. We obviously all know about Ashley Babbitt, but there was somebody else that goes relatively untalked about, and honestly, it is one of the worst. The militarization that happened to Ashley Babbitt that made her a near crackhead as as things were leading up to J6, the infamous "Where's Kamala" screaming video and everything. That is a completely different story. But what happened to Rosanne is it shows you the dark corruption of innocent and good-minded people when the sort of eldritch tentacles of shadowy krakens, squids, octopus get in people's minds and the suckers start getting entrenched in their brain and start doing those dark whispers in the night that corrupt people who should have otherwise been good. It is literally them saying, "He will protect the children. He will get the children out of the tunnels. Believe. You have to believe." That's what Q does to these people who don't have the mind to fight it off. These Cthulhu-ish whispers that so completely corrupt people's sanity. Many game players are going to be familiar with this kind of setup. They're going to know Eldritch stuff and Cthulhu lore and those kinds of things. But I can certainly not blame people for not really getting the idea of what it is. Just think of it as a very dark whisper, or those moments when your brain turns on you and shows you images or says things to you that you don't particularly really want to deal with, but your brain is just kind of doing it. The things that happen when you close your eyes and try to sleep and it keeps you up at night. That's what Q does. And what happened with Rosanne Boyland was really, really tragic. So Rosanne Boyland died at January 6th because right around here somewhere, right where this bald guy's kind of falling to the left and then this crush of people, Rosanne Boyland died due to what we originally believed to be essentially akin to a concert crush. It was thought that she was asphyxiated when a crush of people started landing on her. The push was happening of the insurrectionists. And yes, we can actually say that they are insurrectionists now because members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers have been found guilty of seditious conspiracy. So to call the people who participated in the January 6th riot to be seditious conspiracy people or insurrectionists, it is now legally possible to say that. So we're going to call them insurrectionists. When deep in the early to mid 4 o'clock range, this crush of insurrectionists was pushing against a tunnel. And after about 10 minutes or so, the cops began to push back. And of course, both sides were spraying chemical irritants like bear mace and pepper spray and everything like that. Well, when the crush back happened, some intelligent-minded people started yelling, get out, fall back, we're going to get crushed." Not because of the mob mentality, not enough people were listening, and you had a sandwich of people in the back who didn't know what was happening, who were pushing forward. The cops were pushing out, and it created a middle BLT sandwich of really, really bad news. And Rosanne Boyland was one of the victims of that. Why she was there is why this story is so dark. So here is a picture of her earlier in the day with her mossy oak sweatshirt, ripped jeans, a kind of a grayishy brown backpack, and American flag sunglasses. Now, under any circumstance, this would certainly look like a happy, kind of a relatively well-adjusted people until you see what appears to be a Trump sign over here and the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. Now, one of these two things in a vacuum isn't necessarily particularly bad. When everything is combined, this is where you can see the cult begins to form over here. If the flag was missing and you kind of saw this, you would think that, well, this is just a very happy person out for a walk. When you add everything combined with the excessively patriotic sunglasses, the flag, poster, this is when things get a little dark. So, oh, my timeline is off a little bit. It was about 2:30, not about 4:30. So, at about 2:30, the rioters on the west side of the Capitol forced their way through the Metropolitan Police, and they were headed to this door down this tunnel. As the crowd entered the tunnel, they were met with a well-corked up riot police in place, and the police began to push back. Some smart people said, "Stop pushing, somebody's going to get hurt." Within about a half hour, the hallway became extremely jam-packed, and John Farina, a photojournalist, was in the area and started filming. The dangerous crush began to form, and the weight of all the bodies, the insurrectionists and the cops pushing back, began to trap a lot of people. The battle continued in the tunnel for about an hour as new arrivals from the back end of the rioters also pushed forward and began to pack in. Visible among the new arrivals is somebody who wasn't there at the beginning, but who managed to push their way up nearly to the head of the insurrectionists, was Rosanne Boyland, which can be seen in a still of this video over here with the sunglasses, the hoodie off, the similar face and backpack strap to this. You obviously the hoodie is up here, but you can tell the shape of the face is the same, especially the lines around the mouth. So actually, no, I was right on the timeline. 2:30 was the start of this. This is about 2 hours later when the mob made a second big push to get in the doorway. This is when the police really started pushing back and began to make some headway and sort of eject the insurrectionists from out of the tunnel and the arch, and they began to tumble down the outside stairs. At this point, you could see here the rioters are beginning to get pushed back, and the arch is a little more clear, and it looks like they're about ready to get some space. Over here, you can see the 2020 scarf guy, which is in and around this area over here. At this point, Rosanne Boyland believed what we originally believed to be was crushed under the pushback and began to suffocate and asphyxiate down on the ground. Here, somebody's starting to help her and get her up, but of course, mob mentality is going on with the crowd. He's not really that effective, and somebody else joined him and tried to get her up off the ground and drag her away. Fortunately, she was kind of a bit of a heavyset woman, so this became a little bit tough. And in this video over here, down in this area of the screenshot, you can see that it looks like somebody is trying to give her CPR. After 2.5 minutes or so, they began to carry her back to the police line so that the police could help and do something about her, because it seemed like she was in very, very serious trouble. A man by the name of the Villain Report, who live streamed, said in a YouTube video posted to his own channel that he saw a woman collapse from asphyxiation inside the tunnel. So this is partly what aided to the belief that she died of concert crush. The man said he tried to feel for the pulse after she was dragged away, but couldn't find anything. She began to get cyanotic with blue lips, and blood was also coming out of her nose. And, possibly maybe she went down and got stepped on, or it was just a matter of blood vessels popping while being asphyxiated. We know this happens in your eyes a lot when you are choked out and lack oxygen. And another rioter by the name of Edward Jacob Lang confirmed that he had seen the same thing, but he wants to blame the police. Well, he was arrested. The Metropolitan Police said paramedics who responded to the call regarding the medical emergencies got there. She was pronounced dead at the hospital, but charges of death were, or manner of death was pending. It eventually would come out that she had died of an amphetamine overdose. If you go over to the Daily Beast over here, it says that Boylan was from 34 years old from Georgia, wanted to be a sobriety counselor, which is really jacked up if she was on meth at the time. She's gonna die. She's dead. She's dead. Rosanne, Rosanne. Her friend was heard yelling. The chief medical examiner, Dr. Francisco Diaz, announced the cause of her death. And who also, wait a minute, let's see. The chief medic also announced the causes of death for 3 others. Okay, right. It took a while, but doctors did eventually come out and say she died of meth and not due to the concert crush. Where this is really sad was played out in this article here from the Washington Post, which unfortunately I don't have access to anymore. But this article from back in 2021 is really, really good. December 16th of 2021. Because it explains so very much how this woman fell down the hole. And how this woman fell down the hole because it was because of the Wayfair child trafficking QAnon conspiracy that happened years ago. If you're not familiar with it, it was this thing on the internet for about a half a month that supposedly Wayfair got what I need, was committing child trafficking. Let's see if this USA Today article talks about it. She was a very motherly person. She could not have kids of her own, and or did not have kids of her own. And due to the fact that she did not have children but was very kid oriented, she began to really dive into being child oriented within her family. She was very big on kids. She liked to watch the family's kids and support them. She was a very child oriented person. So when she began to see the news coming out about the Wayfair trafficking scandal, she really it got a hold of her. It sunk its claws into her, those octopus tentacles that I was talking about earlier, and began to whisper to her in the night that this was something that may have happened. And what this whole trafficking scandal was, the conspiracy, was that when you went to Wayfair's website, you would see really, really expensive pieces of furniture with odd names on it. And it would be way more expensive than you think it should be. So, like a Victoria cabinet, an Ashley sofa, and it would be like $2,000, $2,800, and really crazy amounts of money. And people thought they were very subtle ways of telling people you aren't paying for the furniture, you're paying for a child named Victoria or Ashley. And it was a way of operating in plain sight that wasn't supposed to get noticed. And that's where this is brought up over here in the USA Today article. Her sisters began to clash with Boylan's political views and the QAnon myth, which includes wild allegations of a child sex ring. Boylan had begun following the conspiracy theory starting about 6 months prior. Boylan explored its baseless accusations that the online furniture retailer Wayfair was part of this fictional ring, and it spiraled from there. So, what was happening is if you're not into conspiracies and don't know the gist of it, there was this overall arcing theme that Trump and only Trump was going to go in and save the kids. He was going to stop the pedo rings and the trafficking rings, and he was going to go into the tunnels below the White House where the kids are for the evil people of the world to get their adrenochrome and perform satanic rituals to prolong their lives on the backs of children, supporting this and giving their, this whole like uh, Rolling Stones uses the blood of young people to keep themselves alive. Like Keith Richards has blood transfusions from young people, and that's why he was able to do so many drugs and stay alive. Just wild, wild theories. So that's what got Rosanne into the conspiracies, which are only right wing. That's what Q is. You don't have conspiracies for the left. It's not leftist people who get involved in the conspiracies. You get introduced to Q drops by being right, and then it further radicalizes you, and then it makes everything about being right. Right wing. Not right is incorrect. So she began to believe that Trump was this hero. And when the Wayfair trafficking scandal happened, and when all these Q drops were like, Trump is going to save the kids and everything, she believed it like the Tooth Fairy. And she said to her family, I'm going to go to January 6th because I think there is something to this. I need to see what's going on with Trump firsthand. If nothing comes of this, I'm going to come back home and I'm going to get out of it. But I need to commit to this day to see it all and maybe end it all. So we have people saying she would text me some things and I'd be like, let me fact check that. I'd sit there and be like, well, it's not actually right. And then we started to get into fights about it and arguments. Boylan's Facebook page featured photos and videos praising Trump and promoting fantasies, including one theory that a shadowy group was using the coronavirus to steal elections. This account posted several times a day and voiced support for Project Veritas, a far-right activist group. Oh boy, these guys. I'm shocked at the mounting evidence of the 2020 election fraud, the account said. Then it shared tweets from Rudy Giuliani saying that the election was stolen. The account shared the memes of Pepe Lives Matter, which was on 4chan, 8chan, and certain sections of Reddit. And one of her people, Samantha, said they chatted over Facebook regularly. A week or two ago, they traded memes of liberals losing their mind online. We like to make fun of liberals. We bonded over it. Boylan's friend, Justin Winchell, said she was pinned down. Put my arm underneath. So now it's back to the day that this all happened. So her final post on Twitter was a repost of Dan Scavino, the White House social media director, with a picture of thousands of people surrounding the Washington Monument on Wednesday. It was taken before Trump in a speech there where he repeated his unfound claims of election fraud and incited demonstrators to go to the Capitol. Boylan's family has received multiple threats since her death. They blame Trump for the violence, believing she got caught. So they are correct. Her family knew this was a dark alley for her. They had already known it when it was starting, but they couldn't convince her to get out of it. And that's where this New York Times article, this Washington Post article says everything. They interview a girl whose name maybe came up in the Wayfair trafficking, and it was believed that she had been stolen, that she had been trafficked. Because she had run away once, everybody thought she had done it again. So everybody descended on her family and they like bust down the door of her room and she's just sitting right there waking up. And she's like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, oh, good, you're here. Everybody's telling us you've been trafficked. It's crazy. It ruined this girl's life. It ruined her family's life over this. And it led directly to Rosanne Boyland's death. If I was Rosanne Boyland's family, I would definitely do a civil suit against Trump for his rhetoric on that day. Whether she died of concert crush or not, or an amphetamine related issue. I mean, if she was on meth, her heart would have been pounding a million miles an hour in the middle of that. And in that, she may not have been able to get her breath properly. So it could be a drug induced asphyxiation. That if she was not on meth, she may have been able to properly regulate herself, maybe even speak clearer and say, "Help! I'm in some trouble here." I don't necessarily know and cannot predict exactly how meth factored in this. The USA Today article mentioned she had many drug related arrests in her history, so it seems plausible that she definitely was on something at the time. However, whether or not she could have been on meth at home and would have died that day is a different story. I believe totally is a combination of things. The meth jacking up her system, creating too much adrenaline, and then potentially falling down or being tripped or being crushed or squashed, not being able to expand her lungs properly and beginning to pass out, and then trampled on in typical concert crush fashion, mob crush fashion. Had she not fallen into the Wayfair trafficking scandal and the conspiracy stuff, the Quidiot stuff, the Q drop stuff, and everything like that, um, she would likely be alive today. And it's hard to sue Q for that kind of stuff when you don't know who Q is. Tracking down who originally posted the Wayfair trafficking story could be a legal outlet for these people, for her family, and potentially sue them into oblivion and cause of, wrongful death. However, I think one of the only things that can be done is get a civil suit against Trump for inciting the mob to go down to the Capitol. Because if she was there that day and she was on meth, but was there for the rally, listened to him speak, and then went home when he was done speaking, and he was like, "Thank you for your support. Please go home. Please let the legal process of this play out. We will fight every way we can, but do not give in to your base instincts. Do not do what you think BLM and Antifa did for months." If he had dispersed them right after the speech, there is a solid chance she could be alive today. And if she hadn't fallen down the fake rightoid conspiracy well that so many people fall down when they find Q and these crazy conspiracy theories and everything like that, she also would be alive today. And I really want to amplify her story because I am a communications person. It's what I grew up doing throughout high school and college and my major and everything like that. These stories get to me because they are part psychology, part communication, and the power of both of them and how they combine to be a completely huge meteor coming for your head. And this woman was a prime example of what psychology and persuasion and sense of community, even if it is a dark and disgusting community, what that can all do to a person and how that can find the back door to your brain that maybe not everybody else has, but this got to her because of her love of kids and seeing conspiracy related stories about kids and the one person who can supposedly save them. That was the hook. To quote Blues Traveler, the hook brings you back. And it got the hook in her through that back door. Her love of kids and protecting kids in these stories. And it sent her to the Capitol that day. And it got her killed. And there are several people responsible for this along the way. Herself with the drugs, Maybe her family could have fought harder, but, what can you really do for a 34-year adult? They have to live their own lives. Trump's words on January 6th and the original perpetrators of the Wayfair child trafficking stories. Those are the four things that contributed to her death, and I kind of you have to take the family out of it. There's only so much they could do other than tying her down, which is a violation of her rights. The drugs, well, that's up to medical people to tell you how much that contributed to her death that day. But the other two, the Wayfair originators and Trump on January 6th, should, as much as possible, be held accountable for this sad death. She, way more than some of the other people who died on January 6th, in terms of the people who chose to be there that day, the people who went as insurrectionists, she deserves this, I think, far less, because she wasn't there out of anger. She wasn't there out of malice. She was there to find out if this stuff was true or not. And unfortunately, she found out. And unfortunately, it wasn't. Thanks for checking out this unfortunately sad episode here on the Political Napalm.